Right on. Well, Dan, it's wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Yes, sir. So before we get into your work, I start the podcast with this question all the time, and it's about COVID and getting through it. It was such a big shapeshifter for all of
Mm.
us. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach things now?
Yeah, so one of the key things I found when we got into COVID was I was kind of looking at different mindsets and things like that. And I actually discovered Marcus Aurelius, who's a very well-known Stoic philosopher, from the Roman era, as it were. He was a great emperor as well. He was one of the few very good emperors who was really caring of his people, believed in their well-being, and wanted to do right by society. And I just started reading his meditations, and a lot of it was just about like focus on what you can control, not what you can't. You know, one of his quotes was about kind of not being emotionless, but understanding that emotions are there to help kind of guide you, and that they are normally telling you something. Sometimes something you might want to avoid, sometimes something that might be a problem, sort of thing as well. And so I found that that was actually a really quite an interesting kind of paradigm shift for me. And I was like, yeah, I can really get into this. And like, it's not something I'm kind of hardcore on, at all. I'm not like, oh, I'm hardcore philosophy stoic or anything like that. But a lot of that philosophy really stuck with me. And I think it's really guided me and helped me build my resilience. Um, and that kind of led to me kind of working out more, going to the gym, looking after myself, going for the run, going for runs regularly, all those kind of things, which kind of kept my health up there when, a lot of people were getting quite poorly during that time.
Yeah.
And I felt like, yeah, that kind of built a lot of who I am today, if I'm honest. So it was a
Yeah.
tough era, but I felt like it shaped me quite positively as well, having to go through that.
So on paper, you're a music industry professional turned marketing strategist. But if I put
Yep.
you in front of a bunch of kids, they always get the truth out of us. They are the serum. 12 years old, you're in a school, it's career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer that child?
So when I was a kid, I wanted to just build robots and stuff. I used to love Transformers, and I used to love all that kind of stuff, and I just wanted to kind of build robots. And it was mainly because I used to love looking at how they were put together. And I think that's always been part of my kind of curious, inquisitive kind of mind, is just looking at um, how things are engineered and why they work in the way they do. And that actually led on to quite a natural progression for me, like listening to lots of music. I grew up around music. It was a massive part of my whole family. My dad was giant rocker. He loved, Elvis, all of the greats. And so I listened to a lot of their music, and then my analytical brain started applying it to the same. Well, how are they making these sounds? Like, how are they putting these riffs together? How are they building these melodies, arranging these things? How are they structuring all these different layers and all of that kind of stuff? And that got me really into music, which led on to me moving into audio production, engineering, and mastering and things, which then led on to doing events from there, sort of thing. So it's kind of, yeah, I wanted to build robots when I was a kid.
I love it. So do you play music? Are you on an instrument?
So I don't really play. I mean, I
Okay.
might be able to hammer out a few chords, but I've got lots of experience working in studios, doing mastering, engineering, recording bands, audio engineering, those types of things, and a lot of music distribution and stuff. Yeah, as well as the live events.
For sure. So what was the first live concert you saw that blew you away?
The first live concert I saw that blew me away was, it's quite funny. It was actually a very small local kind of gig, because my dad, like I said, he used to love all that sort of stuff. My mum did too, and I don't even remember the name of the band. I think they might have been a cover band or something. But we went and they were playing loads of kind of classic Credence Clearwater Revival covers and stuff like that. It obviously wasn't the actual band because they're massive and it would have been a sold out arena, but they were kind of doing all the covers and things like that. And I just remember everyone just having such a great time and rocking out to that. And obviously hearing all those songs and stuff. And that was right about the time when I actually really got into starting to kind of really pay attention to the music and how it was put together and things. And I heard that. So I was watching them like a hawk on the stage, just like, how are they doing that with the
Yeah.
guitar? Why have they got the microphone like that? how's he doing that with the drums to kind of get that rhythm and all these kind of things, but at the same time dancing my butt off as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's worked. But wanting to build robots, you have a very analytic way of looking at it, and everybody has their piece. Like for instance, I've
Mm,
always wanted to learn an instrument, but I
mm,
think being a music admirer and being behind the microphone and presenting this catalog, specifically jazz, makes more sense to me because I've already done enough difficult things. I want it to
yeah,
almost be a
yeah.
mystery, this like thing that fell out of a spaceship, and we're all marveling at it.
100%. Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And I think one of the problems I found when I started getting into the audio engineering side of things, it kind of made you really dissect the music and be very, very critical of everything. And if I'm honest, I love part of it because there was a lot of creativity. I produced a lot of music, but that kind of side of stuff, it kind of took a lot of the magic away from it,
Yeah.
for quite a while. So I had to get back to that by almost ignoring all of that, kind of like, well, I just ignore the EQ, ignore all of this kind of effects, stuff like that, and just get back into the groove and don't worry about the rest of it, sort of thing. So, completely agree there. Having some magic to it is really important.
I had some good friends in my 20s that almost made it really big, and I used to go see their shows. And they were always good, and they'd get off stage and they would talk about all of these little pieces that
Mm,
just didn't click, and I didn't hear it. So I think maybe that was ingrained in my brain. I don't want to get that close. I want it to be this magical gift of just auditory delights anytime I hear
yeah,
it, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Agreed. Yeah. I still really, I love that kind of like hearing new sounds and how things are structured and how people kind of put things together. And like I was chatting to one of my friends who, we were talking about audio files and kind of sound quality and all those kind of things. And I actually went to an event, which was basically, it was a club night, right? So it was a nightclub, but you would sit down and they'd have bean bags and comfy chairs and all that. And you'd sit there and they just had this Valve kind of analog sound system, which they spent like £2 million on, and you just sit there and you just listen to the music. And like it was very quiet. It wasn't like loud and noisy. The music was at a good volume, but people weren't talking over it. They were just sitting there, actually just listening to the music, and it was a very different experience, and you hear they're playing lots of classic songs that you would have heard maybe hundreds of times on the radio over the years, all the greatest hits and things like that. And you hear stuff that you'd never heard before. And I'm like, well, that was always there. So someone had put it in there for some reason because they thought, maybe someone will hear that one
Uh-huh.
day on, if they're listening on this or that or this. And then they might go, oh, why was that in there, sort of
Yeah.
thing. And I felt that was really interesting to do that.
What the kids call Easter eggs, so to speak.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly that. Little Easter eggs in the
Yeah.
actual track. Yeah.
So, the thing about getting into the music industry is whether you're a musician or you're on the back end of it, having a dream of getting into that world is quite a thing. You have this ideological notion of how it's going to turn out. What was the
Yeah.
difference between the dream of getting in the inside of that music world and the fact that it actually happened? What was the gray area in between?
So yeah, so what I found was unfortunately the grey area was a lot of the actual industry, and like we work with a lot of venues and like promoters. I became a promoter myself, but we work with a lot of venues who like unfortunately not all of them, because some of them were fantastic to work with, but some of them were very, very below the line, and they kind of like would kind of high profits and things like that from the ticket sales and all these kind of things, like under disclosed kind of takings and all these kinds of things, and you know um give you a particular budget and then take it away at the last minute and then blame you for the event not being particularly great and stuff like that. So there was quite a lot of that when I was in the industry. However, um school of hard knocks and all those types of things, I'm quite a resilient fellow. I don't really believe in giving up. I kind of pushed forward and definitely learned a lot from that, and was able to kind of tighten up a lot of those agreements and things like that we had with venues and things. But there was quite a bit of that at the time when I was in there, and as well on the music releasing side of things as well. There was lots of kind of labels and stuff who would just not really handle their kind of finances particularly well. And, you know, for example, money from digital sales was meant to go into kind of vinyl production, CD production, artwork and all these kinds of things. And it basically kind of got swallowed up by their losses and things like that. So there, I knew of that type of thing happening quite a lot as well. And it
Yeah.
happened to me as well several times. Yeah.
Yeah. So who's been your hero? Who's been your inspirational force in your career?
Oh, that's a good one, that. So in terms of music, do you mean, or just in general?
Just in general, who's inspired you to become who you are, to this evolution of your career?
So this is going to sound really quite left field, coming out of nowhere, based on what I've just said. But like Arnold Schwarzenegger, believe it or not,
Yeah.
I know it sounds crazy, but I
No.
just absolutely loved his. Just like this is something I really want, and I'm going to go after it with all my might. And he didn't just do one major achievement; he did like three, like major ones. He became like the Mr. Olympia when everyone said it was kind of impossible. And then he said, like, well, I'm going to be one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And then he was the biggest movie star in the world. And then he went into government and did that as well. And I was like, I don't know that many people
Yeah.
who were able to kind of do that. And like, yeah, love him or hate him, I think that's kind of something to really kind of look up to. And I always felt that was quite a driving force. Um, Definitely in my younger years and things. You know, just watching his films and hearing him talk and just having those interviews with him and stuff, was just quite inspiring. But yeah, a bit left field when I say that to people. They're like, "Oh, really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but you think about it,
No,
you know?
it makes sense to me. And I saw the Netflix documentary. It was like a 2 or 3 part
Yeah,
documentary.
yeah,
And I remember that part where he hung up that picture of his idol on the wall and he ended up, I think, either beating him or meeting
yeah,
him. And it's wild to think how all of these things that he wanted to do, he was on a one-track mind. And when he was a kid, there was nothing about his childhood that would have lent
mm,
to anything becoming what it became, you know?
yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, it was a very. He had a lot of adversity, and
yeah,
like it was quite. You could probably say his father was quite abusive in a lot of the way he treated him and things like that. And then he still went on to kind of achieve all those crazy things, and he's still making big waves now. And
yeah,
he's like in his 70s, isn't he? I mean, he's in mid 70s now. And he's still kind of inspiring people with fitness and health and things like that. So yeah, I think he's one of those people who um definitely helped steer the path I was on in a lot of
yeah.
ways. Yeah.
So what is it that gets you up every day to do this work that you do, to do it at a high level, to take care of your own soul? What is that energy for you every day?
So I think one of the key things why I love working in the event space is that we kind of mainly work on the digital side of things for our event clients. So we're kind of spending a lot of our time online, making ads, content, websites, all these kinds of things. But the thing I love about what our clients do and the industry I'm in is that events are they're just very real. They're like just people in a room all at the same time having an experience. And I feel like that's something which is really important, especially more so these days, because people are feeling more isolated than ever, especially the younger generations. They're feeling a lot more isolated. There's a lot of there's a lot of weird stuff happening on the internet. I mean, with all the AI stuff, people are starting to question everything they're
Yep.
seeing. Is this real? Is this fake news? Or is this
Oh,
actually legit happening right now? And so I feel like it's still going to be very hard for the long time to fake 500 people in a room listening to music, listening to a speaker at an event, experience things, those kind of things. I think it's going to be very hard to fake that. And our clients do that really, really well. And I get to go along to a lot of those events across many different areas. I get to hear great speakers. I get to hear, you know, um, consultants, coaches, speakers, influential people, music artists, bands, all these kinds of things, DJs, everything, and kind of brands who are just doing really cool stuff. And so I feel like that's kind of why I love getting up in the morning is because like we're helping clients do some pretty incredible events, you know, and like some of them I'm like, wow, when I was doing events, if I was doing that now, that would be epic, you know. So it's kind of our little slice of the pie there, I think.
And you're taking on projects that are difficult. There's complexities. There's a lot of moving parts. When you look at the arc of your career, what was one of the more difficult projects that you had that made you grow and you look back and you think, wow, we pulled it off?
Yeah, so a few key things were really just a getting the kind of the business off the ground in the first instance. But when I kind of did that, I realized that actually setting up the business was quite straightforward. It was getting customers was the biggest challenge, you know. And a lot of the unlocks I found from that were from creating lots of marketing, doing all different types of things, and none of it working. You know, like, and like just kind of like, why is this not working at all in any way? You know, we're putting on these good events, we're doing all these cool things, and no one seems to be resonating with it. And what I found was that actually, you know, talking to people on a much more kind of emotional level, kind of resonating with them on a why, not a what type of scenario was much more effective when it came to kind of bringing people together and getting them actually interested in an event, you know. And it's a little bit like vague saying why in a lot of ways because it can be in a lot of things for different people. But all I knew was when we were, for example, doing our event and we needed to get people in the door and things like that, it wasn't, oh, we need to get people in the door. So like, let's just like try and hammer them with discount sales and tickets and things like that. It was kind of like, why did I put on this event? What have we booked these people? Why are we, you know, even caring about the sound engineer who's running the sound for this and stuff like that? Why did we choose this venue? You know, why does this music matter to us? How did this music impact our lives? You know, and just kind of having a lot more of that reason to it. What I found was as soon as we started doing that, we were able to communicate much better with our audiences, and you know, things really picked up from there. And that's how I was able to kind of scale events from, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, kind of
Yeah.
small little venues, up to kind of doing 3,000 person kind of events at the end, before I had kids and couldn't really stay up till 4 in the morning, 5, 6 nights a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you were to have a dream tonight, run in to an 18-year-old version of you in your home that you were living at the time, and you sat down and showed kind of a coffee table book of how your life turned out, pictures and kind of illustrations of what's happened, would
Mm.
that young version of you believe it?
No. In some ways, it might believe it could maybe he could see the path, like, oh, I can see why you'd be doing that kind of thing. But I think some of the cool stuff, and if I'm putting it straight out there, I genuinely feel like I've been very lucky to do a lot of cool stuff in my life. I'm 44, and you know, I've met loads of amazing people, I've been to lots of great places. I was able to like book some of my most favorite artists from across every genre sort of thing, and actually meet them face to face and shake their hand and then perform with them and things, because I used to do comparing and hosting for a lot of the events and stuff. So, you know, be able to do that. And like when I was a kid, just, you know, just working out like how music and stuff was constructed and put together, I would have never thought, you know, 10, 20 years later or so, I was then actually doing those kind of events where all of those things were coming together. So I think it might have seen the path, but not believed where it actually took me.
So let me take it a step further with kind of having these moments where you pinch yourself because it's a dream and you're with your idols. If you were to be in a room of people that know you in a business sense,
Yeah.
and you could walk up to a podium in front of all of them and tell them a really cool story of meeting an idol or meeting a musician and just what that experience was like for you and how it resonated in your life, what would be a good story that you could tell that room?
Yeah. So there was one which I found was, it was really quite you know, a light bulb kind of moment for me. We had booked an artist for this event, and the event was selling well. You know, we had quite a lot of tickets coming in. It was looking like the event was going to sell out in advance, which is always nice when you're running an event. You're not stressing about that. But a lot of people online at the time were kind of talking about, I can't believe you booked this artist. You know, he's a right a hole. and he's a horrible artist. He's just rude, and he speaks to people like piece of crap and all this kind of, they were really, it was a small minority of people, but they were really, really against this artist coming to their town. And when the night actually came up, uh, he he came to the door and he was like, "Oh, hey Dan, how you doing? Like, I really appreciate you coming and booking me. Honestly, I've been wanting to come to Reading for so long now. I've never been to this town. I really appreciate you booking me for the first time ever in this town. That's amazing stuff. I've heard really great things. I watched some of your videos online. I love what you guys are doing. And he was like the nicest guy you could meet, right? You know what I mean? And I was like, well, this is just a complete opposite to what I've been told by some of these people. And then he came on and he did his show, and everyone was absolutely loving it. And then at the end of the show, he then stayed behind for a while, chatting to fans and people. Do you know what I mean? And he was just like taking photos with them, and you know, he was so polite during his set. Everything, he was great. He was really cool to the sound engineer. Everything. He goes, "Oh, if there's any way you can just do X, Y, and Z for me." And I was just like, he was complete polar opposite to how he was being described. And so for me, I was just like, I almost let those people determine how I perceived this person before I'd even met him. And I felt like from that moment on, I was like, you know what? I'm never going to let what someone else says about someone determine I how my first interaction with that person should be, because ultimately I could have been like all really standoffish, and I could have been quite standoffish to him, which may have um got his back up a bit, because I had my back up, but I was like, no, I'm going to take this at face value. And I felt like from there it was kind of like the the cover of the book had already been judged by other people, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to judge the book by its cover.
Yeah, I dig it. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've accomplished and done, more importantly, evolved to at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
um so I feel like one of the things which necessarily isn't necessarily like a sort of financial or business kind of thing I'm proud of, but it's being able to kind of impart knowledge on other people. And like, I feel like I've gathered a lot of knowledge over the decades. I feel like there's more knowledge inside my head than this 40-year-old, 44-year-old body would hold. And I get a massive reward from helping people understand things more, without kind of telling them how to understand it. If they're genuinely interested, I get that. And I've been complimented many times over the decades about how sage like I am when it comes to things I'm interested in, how I'm willing to engage people in those conversations and not just dictate to them how they should understand the thing, but just actually having those open conversations with them. And I feel like that's generally made me a better communicator. And the the thing which really resonates with me about that is that I kind of feel like I'm passing it on to my children, because they're kind of doing that as well. I see them doing that already, even though they're only 7 and 11. I see them doing that already, and I'm like, well, if they carry on doing that, then that should probably set them up quite well for the future. So um, I feel like that's probably one of the proudest things that I enjoy about this life I live.
So let me ask you this, Dan. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that you work with, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I think I'm quite an outgoing kind of guy who is willing to help always, and kind of I'm quite empathetic in the way I approach things, but I'm also a very complex thinker. So I can go way deeper than than people would really realize a lot of the time. And sometimes that can be a bit of a hindrance because I can overthink things quite a lot. But it's because I'm normally trying to join very nuanced dots. And so I can often feel very outgoing as a result of that, but I can often kind of feel quite withdrawn as well, because I'm kind of like thinking about everything almost in fifth dimensions, as it were, all the time. And when people are interested in, or want to know more, then again, I like to kind of be helpful, and I get a lot of reward and satisfaction from helping other people generally. Um, I feel resilience is a key part as well. And that can help me be a better role model for my children and ideally the people I love, which are mean a heck of a lot to me. I
Yeah.
mean, I know everyone says family means a lot, but family is everything for me. And, I try and lead by example.
Right on. So if anyone wants to hire you, questions, any of the good business, where's the best place for them to find out?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to follow me on social media, the best place is LinkedIn. You can just go LinkedIn/Dan Charles and you'll find me. I put a lot of content up there, um, videos, articles, and things like that, all about marketing strategy and stuff. If you want to know more about the business, Codarity.com is the best place for that. I regularly publish new articles and videos and case studies and things like that about what our agency does and how we can help you.
Okay, sounds wonderful. I will have all those links in the show notes. Dan, wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Very much enjoyed it. Cheers.
Yes. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.